everyone thinks it's amazing and how lucky you are and you're gonna have so much fun, but it's not always quite as it seems.
Joined by Sunday Times bestseller 4 times in a row, Food Creator of the Year and gluten-free blogger and recipe creator, Becky Excell. I'm going to talk about the double mastectomy, and because obviously you've been very kind of open about it and kind of the whole journey.
That's something I was super open about and something that I really wanted to be open about, because it's something that when I first was told about like the BRCA gene, I'd never heard of it.
There's an 88% chance of getting breast cancer.
Everyone is judged and given a percentage differently. So everyone who has the BRCA2 gene mutation, if you're a woman, and if you're a man, you have increased risks of certain cancers. Well, I was out doing cooking demos again after a month. Terrible. They told me I shouldn't. I have kids that dress up as me for World Book Day, and that is the most, that honestly,
I didn't know that.
It is crazy. It's like,
do they dye their hair pink?
Yeah, they've had or I don't know what they do. They get their nails painted, they get glasses even though they don't need them, and it's like you can have all the success in other elements of stuff. And I know I've been on the telly, I've sold books and stuff, but that kids dressing up as you beats that is the pinnacle. I cannot say that anything is better than that.
Could you do me a massive favour and click follow or subscribe button? It helps the podcast out so much. Well, welcome back to another episode on the Making Time podcast. So I'm joined by Becky Excell, and honestly it's incredible to have you on, because obviously I've been aware of you from kind of the Free From Food Awards, but also the Allergy Free From shows, and you always have such a massive crowd when you're doing like the book signing. So it's incredible to have you on today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been a crazy old time doing all those sort of shows and stuff, and having so many people come see me. It's weird. It's very, very strange.
You find it a bit surreal, yeah?
Yeah, because I was doing one the other day actually, and I had like a little girl come and bring me a card, and then you get I find it's the kids that really do it for me. It's like I have kids that dress up as me for World Book Day, and that is the most, that honestly,
I didn't know that.
It is crazy. It's like,
do they dye their hair pink?
Yeah, they've had or I don't know what they do. They get their nails painted, they get glasses even though they don't need them, and it's like, you know, you can have all the success in other elements of stuff. And I know I've been on the telly, I've sold books and stuff, but that kids dressing up as you beats that is the pinnacle. I cannot say that anything is better than that. That's my favorite thing. So yeah, it is just a very overwhelming, crazy thing, but you know, that's
insane. That I was going to say, for the listeners, I think obviously within like the gluten, but also outside of that, they'll be aware. But for the listeners who may have not come across yourself before, would you just like to do like a little introduction?
Yeah, I'm terrible at intros.
Oh, really?
Everyone, I think everyone is terrible at intros.
I did have an intro. I was going to introduce you.
Yeah, no, I'll give it.
Sometimes bestseller like 4 times over, but I'll let you.
I'll give it a go. So I'm Becky, and I basically just started creating gluten-free recipes about 10 years ago. I've been gluten-free for 14 years. And my whole thing is sort of that everything's just grown from then. And currently, I guess I would class myself as like a Sunday Times best-selling author, which I prefer to just say author.
Weird saying it?
It sounds really odd. And yeah, I just like to help people not miss out on eating the foods that they enjoy. And it's sort of just I think I'm a bit of everything. So I'm not one thing or another thing. I'm just this girl who has started making recipes due to frustration, and then other people have just found me, and that
along the way.
And that's my that's how everything sort of happened. And nothing's really ever been planned. It's just like everything started as a hobby.
Has it been quite organic then, like your growth? Because obviously you've got 300,000 followers now on Instagram. When you kind of look back, has it been... Was there a moment where it just really took off?
So I find lots of people, especially there's been a lot of people on social media who, when lockdown happened, they seem to just go really quickly and get really loads of followers over like a short period of time. But like for me, it's been like, I've been doing it 10 years and it's been kind of slow. And it's just been this sort of gradual sort of curve, I guess. And yeah, it's just been a lot of hard work. And I think a lot of people who started doing what I did at the same time as me, maybe they've kind of dropped off, because it's blooming hard when you sort of put loads of content out there and you make stuff and you put photos out there and no one likes them really. And it's so easy to just be like, oh, I give up. And I think that's what loads of people do. And I think that's one of the reasons that I've been able to succeed in what I do, because other people just were like, because I get it. It's hard, isn't it? When you do stuff, I'm sure when you started doing the podcast at the very beginning, you're like, oh, it's going to be
it's
great.
It's like starting with zero again. And it can be quite daunting as well, when you don't have like an audience and you're trying to like find yourself or kind of find
it's just a worry. You kind of think, oh, you believe in it because you have to believe in it to do it. But then you're like, well, maybe you have these expectations and stuff, and then it doesn't always go to plan at first, but you just have to keep going. So for me, it has been a really sort of slow but enjoyable sort of thing. And it's just once I got into that mindset of never giving up on it, I just never did. And it was just like, oh, well, it's not doing that well. Oh, it's doing a little bit better. And you get these sort of highs and lows. And I think that's what sort of made it do as well as it has and made people sort of feel like they know me, is because I've been doing it so long. They've come along on that journey. Some people have come a bit later, but then they feel part of sort of this community of people, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. So to kind of touch upon like your audience, because I think what really surprised me, obviously I kind of saw like the audience and community you've gathered over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But then me obviously not being in that gluten space, it was the first time I kind of got introduced to yourself and then kind of watching your content. And you had this like such an open and kind of honest relationship as well throughout your whole kind of life experience. Have you always been that from a young age, or is that something which has just happened later on?
I don't think I always have been very open. I think I've been quite, growing up, I was probably actually quite the opposite. I was quite closed, and like if I had problems like at school or just, growing up as a teenage girl and stuff, all those things, I would keep everything very much to myself. Like I wouldn't necessarily always even tell my mum or my parents about stuff. And I think it just got to this point where I was like, I think I'd done it for so long and I'd just been very sort of, because I'm quite an introverted sort of person. So I never really shout about things too much. And I'm never like, I don't know, I've always been a bit more like that. And then I think I just got fed up of being like that. And at some point I was just like, right, I'm just going to be honest and open. It's like some of the first things that I started being really honest about was sort of all my stomach issues and like, talking very openly about diarrhea and constipation and stuff. And I remember...
Would it always be like in your Instagram stories? Is that how...
Yeah, so...
Or would it be like...
I've got all different sort of social things. So one of my first things that I found that I was very open with, and I had quite a good community, which I've kind of slowed down a bit and I've just not got enough time, but was my YouTube. So I used to do like IBS diaries on YouTube sort of every week, and I would just tell it how it was and say how my stomach was. And I found that a lot of people came back like, oh my God, I've never heard anyone say this before
in that way,
and just be really, really open about, talking about gas and all this stuff that people don't want it. People feel really awkward.
It's so funny you say that, because when I have like I had Morgan on the podcast the other day.
Oh, she's great.
She's like so open, and she's open about like gas, and it's great because obviously like I think it's a bit of like a taboo, and some people don't always feel comfortable kind of talking about that.
Well, saying that, when I first did one of my first YouTube videos where I was talking really openly about that, at the time I was living in Manchester, and my mum watched it and she texted me and was like, take that video down. You should not be talking like that.
Oh, really?
Like thought it was a bit sort of, people don't want to be hearing about your bowel habits and stuff. And that sort of, I think that was a point that really actually motivated me to keep going with it. Because I was like, well, actually, that's what everyone kind of thinks, but that's not how it should be, because we all have to go to the toilet. We all have these issues. Most people who follow me have some sort of issue. That's the reason they follow me. And I just want to make it so that people feel like less alone.
Like normalize it.
Yeah, normalize it and make things just seem it's okay to talk about it. Or even if you don't want to talk about it, I'm there for you to listen to and just feel like, oh, at least it's not just me. Because so many things like that, I think a lot of things that I talk about are generally things that people don't always want to talk about. And I just want to help people.
Have you been like that from day one, as soon as you started the blog?
I guess so. As soon as I started talking a bit more, because initially the very first things I was doing on the blog were just literally going to the supermarket, picking up a product and being like, oh, here's some gluten-free jam tarts. I think they're nice. And then I was doing a few recipes. But as soon as I started talking openly about myself, it was always very much being open, being honest about everything. Yeah, because
you get like a personal connection. They feel like they know you. And I think we spoke earlier on the phone yesterday, and I feel like you've always probably feel like, because they've been on this journey with you for so long now, they've been there for everything you've kind of been through.
Yeah, I mean, like there's been so many ups and downs through what I've sort of been through. And I've had things along the way, like very early on when I started the blog, I was in a point where was struggling with an eating disorder. I didn't mention it at the time then because I didn't feel comfortable. But then a few years later, I opened up more about that to everyone, and it made people feel more connected with me and stuff. And then like there's been so many things since then, and I feel like, I don't know, it's just a really, I think if anyone is ever thinking of doing kind of the thing that I do and blogging or starting social media accounts, I think the biggest thing is always just to be super open and be yourself. Because that's one thing that I found throughout my whole life. Because
you couldn't put it on for 10 years as
well.
No,
exactly.
If you put on this like personality, and when I started, someone close to me said it, and I don't use it against him or whatever, but he was like, oh yeah, but you don't have like the biggest personality. But I don't think you need the biggest personality. You just need to be yourself.
I think people really value that, and they just value seeing someone who's kind of like them. You don't need to be this sort of super shouty in your face kind of person, because that's not what most people are like. There are people like that. But I think people who like to watch people online and see stuff generally aren't always those sort of people. They're people looking for other people like them. They might not have as many friends, they might not have as many this or that, and they just want to relate to someone about something. So I've just been doing it for so long, and I can only be myself. And
that's what I mean, and it's been incredible. Can we talk about your relationship with food from when you was younger? Have you always had a good relationship with food, or how's that kind of been for you?
I mean, growing up, I loved food. Then I became a really fussy eater about, I don't know, when I was like at primary school. I was like one of these kids who wouldn't eat the skin on jacket potato, with the skin on custard. When we used to have school dinners, we'd have apple crumble and custard. I wouldn't have the skin on the custard, and I wouldn't eat the apple. I'd just eat the crumble because I was just like, I don't want fruit. I don't want this. I only ate carrots and peas. So I was very kind of fussy. And then gradually I grew to be less fussy and just enjoying my food. And then it kind of, I can't entirely tell what happened or why. And this is one of the things that was quite kind of difficult when I had my eating disorder. That usually people sort of say, oh, you know, if you've got an eating disorder, there must be a reason like childhood trauma,
like
or
a
this
trigger point.
Some sort of. And it was like, for me, you know, I was really ill. I was diagnosed with anorexia. I was in a day unit where I went sort of every single day for weeks. And I'd have all these sort of classes or sessions with counselors and psychotherapists, and they often would just sit there and ask me, like, you know, there must have been something that your dad said or your mum said, or there was an issue somewhere. And it was like, no, there wasn't.
There was no like,
there was just like a lot of different things. Like at one point I remember growing up, my dad wasn't very well, and I used food as sort of a tool to overcome that when he was in hospital and I was at home by myself. And I just remember eating tons and tons and tons of biscuits and just being like quite obsessive over things like that. And I think I then started to see it as an emotional kind of and it kind of started from there. But then I started to really struggle a lot with food when I started university, and then again that was when I wasn't very happy, so I was using food as sort of a,
because I kind of saw that you really got into like fitness, and you was going all the time. And I was just wondering, was that maybe a trigger point? Because obviously you're working out all the time, and
I feel like there was definitely something in that. But you know, growing up, I was a really sporty kid, so I was someone who I played tennis like multiple times a week. I was like the sporty kid at school, like who was the captain of all the teams. I won the 100 meters all the time. Like I was that girl who was known as the sporty girl. And so I always loved my sport, and I always loved stuff. And as soon as I was allowed to go to the gym, like I think at 14, they had like some junior gym membership. I did that and stuff, and I got really into it. But then I don't know why, but it suddenly got a bit obsessive and it got a bit too much.
Have you got addictive personality, do you think?
I think, yes. I think in a way. And I think the whole sort of, I've been watching a lot of stuff on telly recently where like there was a documentary with Matt Willis about his sort of drug addiction. I think it was a drug addiction sort of thing that he had. And I was watching that, and I listened to things that people like Russell Brand have done and stuff as well. All these people who are proper addicts. And I feel bad saying it because I'm like, well, that's really serious. That's a drug addiction. But so many of the behaviors that then came about as part of my eating disorder, I relate so much to those people in terms of certain things that you do when you're kind of addicted to something. Like, you're really deceitful, you hide stuff, you do things in weird ways, you don't let people into your life, and you're really sneaky. All those sort of things I sort of did, and I always feel just like it's kind of odd to say it, because it's like, this person's, I don't know, been using cocaine or something like that. Do you know what I mean? These really sort of serious things. And then when it comes to something,
it feels weird, like kind of linking it
like,
to like,
it's because, like, you know, with an eating disorder, some of the stuff I was doing, like, I would sneak off, because I would not eat for like quite a few days, and then I would suddenly sneak in and grab some really bizarre food and just eat honestly the weirdest things in the world I would eat. And I would just be really, really sneaky about it. And it's because it's food. I don't think it's thought of in such a kind of serious way as drugs, for instance. But at the same time, it, in a way, I feel like, not that I want to compare it, but it kind of makes it harder, because food is just everywhere. Food is around you. You have to eat to live. So whereas, like, if someone's like an alcoholic, what they need to do is they need to stop drinking alcohol and they can never drink it again. I couldn't stop food because then I wouldn't be here. So it's kind of like a, it's kind of a weird.
How did you overcome that? Did it take time, or did it take years? It wasn't like a overnight.
Yeah, so I feel like it started, but I didn't realize it started in about 2010. And then it just progressively got worse, and I didn't really realize what was happening. And then by about 2013, I sought help. Like, I seeked out help. So it took a few years for me to even do anything. Because I was just like happy. Like, I was going to the gym for sort of 3 hours in the morning, sometimes 3 hours in the evening. I was doing really excessive stuff like that, and just, I don't know, I was just eating weirdly and stuff. But
when you say you was going for so long, was you trying to escape something at the time?
Well, I remember. So my whole university experience was very strange. So I went to uni in Manchester for a year, then I dropped out, and then I went to uni in Brighton at the University of Sussex for a year, and dropped out. And when I was at Sussex, I had a really the worst experience of all, where I didn't have anyone, like no sort of friends. I was in weird accommodation, and I was like so unhappy that I remember literally looking in the mirror and saying to myself, right, if I'm not going to have a good time here, I'm not going to have the proper uni experience, let's just get myself into the best shape of my life. And I always remember saying that.
It's interesting you say that, because I had the similar experience when I went on placement year. I went to Amsterdam. I was out in my comfort zone for a year. And I got there and just hated it. Like, hated the job. Like, the people wasn't particularly nice to me at the time. And my escape at the time was like going to the gym every day after work. And that's what got me through that whole experience. Obviously, my friends came there later on, but like at the time, like, that was my escape.
Yeah, well, I think with things like that, people often think, like with uni, with, you know, doing a placement in Amsterdam and stuff, everyone thinks it's amazing and how lucky you are and you're going to have so much fun, but it's not always quite as it seems. And I think there's so many people, like, since I've told people, you know, how I dropped out of uni a few times and stuff, I've heard so many other people go, oh, actually, I did too, or I had a really crappy university experience. And everyone just thinks it's what you see on social media. And it's all this really fun and everyone's having a great time. But actually, there's a lot of people who aren't really having the best time in the world either. But yeah, it was during that second year at university that I just said to myself, you know, I'm gonna get in the best shape of my life. I just went to the gym constantly. I really limited what I was eating. I'd eat very tiny amounts of food, and then because of that, a few days later, all you could think, when you don't eat much, all you can think about is food. And then a few days later, I'd be like gorging on stuff, and then I'd be going to the gym again, and I'd feel upset. And that was the point, I think, where it got really bad. And then in terms of it getting better, it was after I started seeing sort of, I went to see therapists and stuff. Like, my dad sorted me out privately initially, and then I got to see someone on the NHS. And some of those things helped, some of them didn't help. So
what's your relationship with like therapy? Because I've done it, and I feel like for me it didn't really help. But then I had a friend on the podcast last weekend, and the episode's not out yet, but we was kind of saying like, trying to find the right therapist is actually really hard, but no one ever kind of talks about that. Yeah,
like for me, there were certain people I spoke to that I think actually did make me think, and they said the right sort of things. And for me, I needed someone who was proper, like almost like a bit nasty to me and put me straight and was like, you're doing
Oh
this.
my God. This is exactly the same conversation was like, sometimes like they're too nice and they don't like tell you.
Yeah. I struggled like when I was at this unit, at this eating disorder unit. Firstly, one of the issues was that I was surrounded by other people who were exactly like me. So you kind of copy each other. You're like, oh, there's something that they do that I haven't done before. And it's like you copy bad habits and you get even worse. But then also I found that it was like the private therapists were more nasty to me, which helped. And then the NHS ones, I found they were all just really softly spoken and like, come on, you'll be all right. Yeah. And it's just like, it didn't work for me. It was just like, I couldn't, it was just useless really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I find that for me, I think I wouldn't say I'm too smart for therapy, but sometimes I think a lot and I think too much and I'm like, I know what they're trying to do and they're trying to say and I'm just like, I get past it and I'm just like, I don't understand how you telling me to think about this in this certain way will make me think about things differently.
I tried CBT and I felt like that didn't work. Like some of the tools like write your worries down and I think that's like, I think that's the problem for everyone. I think
it's the problem with mental health generally is that, and why so many people have bad mental health is because there's these sort of ways and routes that psychologists and therapists are supposed to help you, and they sort of have these things that obviously they have to learn ways to help, but it's not going to help everyone because we're all really different. What helps you is not going to help me, which is not going to help the next person. And then a therapist might have a really good experience helping someone with something, and then they're like, oh, I'll try that with the next one, but that next person's a completely different human being. Yeah. So yeah, for me, it's always been something that when I've gone through points in my life that I've thought, actually, maybe I would like to speak to someone, I'm always like, oh, maybe I will. But then I never get around to it because I'm just like, oh, it's not going to help.
It's not, yeah.
And it is about finding the right sort of person. And for me, I never have the time to.
I was going to ask, like, what's your relationship then with like social media? Because it plays such a big part of your life in terms of like constantly kind of creating content, and even I find it like a bit overwhelming. Like it's a bit of like, I don't know, it's a game in some ways, and
I definitely have a love-hate relationship with it. I love it for what it's allowed me to do, and it's changed my whole entire life. My job, everything I do is focused on that. But equally, it's probably not even 50-50. It's more that I dislike it, and I wish that it could be different. I don't like how everything somehow feels somewhat competitive, and it's not even competitive with other people, it's like with yourself, but then there's comparison, and you sort of see other people doing well and then you're not doing well, and
it's
then
like even like the whole algorithm, like you put so much effort into something, and then if it's the algorithm doesn't think it's good or whatever, or the watch time is low, then
it's so frustrating how like
looking back at yourself.
Yeah, because you'll make something and you know that it's perfect for your audience. You know that everyone, well, not everyone, but a good percentage of people who follow you would really like what you've created, and then you look at how many people it's been served to and you're like, well, how it's just not cool. And I've spoken to people at like the social media platforms about it, and they're like, well, you're just probably not putting out what your audience want. And it's like, but I know that they like it and I know that they want it, and when I speak to them about it, they're like, oh yeah, I really like that, but I never see your stuff. And it's just like, well,
really frustrating,
and it feels like social media almost like holds us all hostage, and it's like it makes us feel like they almost have control over us, and I wish they didn't, because
Are you on TikTok as well?
Yeah, but TikTok's a joke. Like I started a TikTok, it didn't do much. Then it suddenly started growing, and over like a few months or so, or a few weeks, I got it up to about, I think it's on about 230k.
Oh wow.
So it's on that, but it's been on that for like a year. And it just doesn't grow. Yeah. And whatever I post, I try different things. I do this, I do that. It's like, oh, every single one, oh, it's 1,000 views. Oh, it's good. Yeah. It's got 6,000 views today. It's like, come on, surely it needs.
So it's such a difficult. I'm been using more for like the podcast clips and stuff. And like some, I say they do well. No, they don't really.
Yeah,
like, they'll get like less than 1,000. I mean, the odd one will get 5 or 10,000.
Yeah.
But like,
I just don't know. I don't know how like they decide which ones will do better and which ones don't. I think it's like if you put one up and it does really well straight away, like it gets more than you usually do, then it will push it out to more people. But it's like sometimes you need to give it just give us a chance, you know. We're just trying hard. Especially with what we do, all we're doing is trying to do stuff that raises awareness and creates, you know, like positivity for people, makes people feel like they've got a place and stuff with, you know.
There should be a metric if it's like raising awareness. It should like bump it up, you know,
then there's like dancing cats and dogs and stuff, and it's like, oh, that's got 1 million views. It's like, well, I guess it
maybe
helped.
Put some cats in your videos.
I should. I'll get my dog dancing or something.
Is it Peggy? Peggy the dog.
Yeah. Oh, Peggy.
I love to talk about as well. Like you've been like, I think what really surprised me, because I obviously before the kind of the allergy shows, I wasn't obviously aware of you because obviously I don't follow kind of gluten.
Well, it's exactly the same with me. It's like that whole thing that I've obviously been doing the allergy shows for ages, but everything in my whole journey up until relatively recently has been really focused on just the whole gluten-free thing. And then someone like you came about at the Allergy and Free From show, and I was like, oh my God, there's this whole other world. Yeah. And I guess you've probably felt the same.
Yeah, honestly, like since having like yourself on and Morgan, and also like Phil Hates Gluten, like I've just like been opened up this whole world of like gluten. And honestly, even like Mark, who owns like the niche restaurants in Islington, like it's just really opened up my horizon, and it feels really exciting. I'm like,
it's like this whole new world.
And even like the followers, like even like people with celiac or gluten follow me now, which I find bizarre because I don't do that content. But obviously, I have you guys.
But that's the thing. There is a massive link between it and how it's not the literal link of like what we do, but there's overlap, and especially with how things can make you feel mentally and stuff, and how you can feel left out of situations, and the social side of allergies, the social side of celiac disease, all these things it's very similar, and I think that's what sort of brings it all together. It's
been incredible. And I think the thing what surprised me is like you've been obviously very open, and you kind of spoke about obviously your friendships and the response you got to that. Can we talk about that, because you kind of spoke about obviously you've not really had any close friends. Is that right?
Yeah. So I guess like when I was at primary school, loads and loads of friends, had a really good time. Secondary school, probably up until about year 9, which I think a lot of people can probably relate to, that when you get to that point where people are starting to kind of grow up or want to grow up that little bit quicker, and there's like, you know, going out and having relationships with people, and suddenly alcohol becomes a thing that people want to do, and people want to be cool, and they want to seem like the cool person. Then that's when things sort of started to go wrong for me. And I feel like I said earlier, I can only be myself. Like I literally can't change my personality. And I think a lot of people, when they get to that age, they sort of almost fake it a little bit, and they fake themselves, and they try and be part of a group or something.
Definitely at that age, they try to adapt.
And that's fine. And I get it. I completely get it, because I feel at the time I felt like, why can't I just do that? Why can't I start caring about this or that? And I just couldn't do it. So at that point, I started to like feel like I was losing friends and stuff, and I felt very much like I was just on the edge of circles. And like I just always remember like at the school prom, like sort of, you know, I got myself dressed up all nice, and me and one other girl were sort of we were with all the friends that we used to be really close with, and everyone was dancing, and we were sort of trying to edge our head into this circle of everyone dancing, but sort of, you know, they were just looking away, and you were sort of just peering around the corner, and it just started to feel really rubbish, and it never really got any better from there onwards. Like I think I didn't have the best experiences at university. And when you're starting at uni and stopping and starting and stopping, you just kind of...
Hard to get into the flow as well.
So initially at Manchester, I had like a nice group of friends in my flat. But then that, obviously, when I started not being very happy, I didn't go out as much, and then I didn't really speak to them. And then so they went. And then I didn't have any school friends really, which a lot of people have up until like when they're at uni. They might be talking still to school friends. They might still have them like now. Then I didn't have any from my first uni. Second uni, didn't make any friendships, anything. And I think the whole eating disorder stuff at the same time played a part in that, because I didn't want to go out and eat with people equally, because I couldn't have gluten. That kind of played a part as well, because I couldn't hang out with people and just go to the restaurants that they were going to, because there were literally back then like no options whatsoever. And then I finally finished up uni by going to Essex, because it was close to where I lived and stuff. And I think because it was so close to where I lived, and my eating disorder was kind of getting really bad as well at that point, I didn't hardly even try. I tried a little bit. I went to some sort of netball trials and tennis trials and tried to just engage in some way, but I never really found a place. And that was really hard at the time.
I was going to say that must be quite hard if you felt like you've always been on this kind of the outer circle and not knowing why you're not in that.
It was weird. And I mean, throughout that whole time, because I've been with my boyfriend Mark since 2009. So basically my whole university from that point, from being an adult onwards, I've always been with him. And people always say, well, at least you have him. But it's different. Do you know what I mean? Like, we obviously get on and we are best friends and we do everything together. But there's this thing that you just want to have some female friends who you can do those things that you see other girls doing, you know? And I never had that, and I still haven't had that where, you know, I'm
because there's obviously certain discussions where like you don't want it to have it your partner sometimes.
Exactly.
And I get the same with my girlfriend. There's certain topics like
you just don't want to. Yeah. And it's like, you know, I'm 32, still haven't been on like a hen do or a girl's holiday, all these sort of things. And again, social media plays this massive role in making you feel a bit rubbish about it. Sort of, you know, you go on there and you see all these pictures of groups of girls having all these fun times and doing all these things. And that used to really get to me. It doesn't so much now. I'm not too bothered. But especially in my 20s, I was just like, oh my God, you know, why can't I just have people who I can do these things with? And then what I found is that after uni, I was like, then my eating sort of got horrendous. So I sort of was quite set back from everything for quite a while. And then I started getting some jobs. So I worked in marketing, PR, sort of food and drink PR and stuff for a little while. And again, I don't know what it was, but I never made any friends with my work colleagues. And like, it would be the case that everyone else seemed to be friends and I'd just be not. And I always felt like I was just on the edge, and I don't know why that was. I guess you don't gel with everyone. Do you know what I mean? And it's
hard sometimes trying to find the right click. Because I mean, even like my work companies, I've worked at 4 different companies in London. There's probably only 2 people kind of stay in touch with, right? So it's difficult, isn't it? Like to find the right people or people you feel like you're on the same level.
Completely.
Like,
and you kind of just see everyone else again looking like they're having a great time, but probably some people are standing there in a group of work colleagues looking like they're having fun, but they're probably not. And they're probably thinking, I just want to go home.
But I think like I know people who have got loads of friends, but I know that they don't have many close friends.
Yeah. And I think
there's a girl, I don't want to, I'm obviously not going to say her name, but like she had like so many groups of friends.
Yeah.
But I knew deep down if shit hit the fan, would she have many close friends? And it's very hard. Like I don't have a massive group of friends, but I do have like people, like close friends I can kind of
well that's what you want.
Fall back on that.
Yeah, I've come to realize that. And then for me, once I sort of stopped all these jobs, like I think it was 2017, I started doing this full time. At that point then I started getting to know a few more people in the sort of gluten-free space, which is quite nice. But then I kind of found that even that I didn't kind of entirely fit in. And I think it becomes this thing where you're all kind of got this one aim of doing really well, and there becomes sort of comparison things and stuff. And then if I was doing quite well, it could make other people not feel so good. And if other people were doing well, it make me feel not so good. Now I'm a bit older. I don't see that as a thing. And but I feel like when you're a little bit younger, you sort of all compare, and it's almost like school. Like when you're at school and you all get a bit competitive with each other, and it seems so silly. And so I struggled a little bit even with that. And it makes you feel like there's something wrong with you, because you're like the whole time.
I was going to ask as well, with having like, obviously you've got a massive audience, you've built over do you think social media's played a part? Like obviously you had people you could speak to there.
Yeah.
Because you've had that, is a part of you which feels like I'm not, I'm not saying you've not made an effort, but no. Because you've had social media there the whole time.
I think so.
Played a part in it,
I think, because like for instance, I've got like a really amazing like Facebook group.
Yeah.
Like that I only set up a few years ago, but it's like nearly got 40,000 people in it, and all those people, I'm in it every single day, chatting to people, and people talk to me like they do. They know me, yeah. And so you kind of can have those discussions and chats and stuff about life with people like that. So you kind of don't almost feel like you do need those people super close to you, like as in literally that you know and you give a hug to like that live down the road.
Yeah.
And I definitely have come to realize that over the last few years, that I always thought that I needed the friends that lived next door and lived up the street, and I wanted all those people close to me. But I've come to realize you really don't need that. And you can have friends just because they're online friends doesn't mean that they're not friends.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that I used to think, and I think it's kind of an old sort of generational thing that, you know, previous generations wouldn't, if you said to like I say to my mum, oh, you know, I've got friends and they're just like online, she'd be like, well, are they safe? Who are they? And then they think that they were like an old man or something that was pretending, which I get that you're trying to be safe, but I think things have moved on a little bit now, and there's so many more people online. And like for me, over the last like year or so, I've actually got quite close to quite a lot of not gluten-free food creators, but just general food creators online. We all kind of do all different things, and that's been really nice because there's no competitiveness between us. We're all supporting each other. Lots of us have books out and we're all posting about each other's books. We're all having fun. We go out for drinks, and it's been the most like crazy thing that it's taken all this time from the age of like when everything went a bit crap for me at 13 and I didn't seem to have any friends up from then onwards. It's taken all the way to age 32, 31, where suddenly I feel like I could say I do have friends. Amazing. And it's like, I feel like it's, I always said when I was trying to give advice to people, when I was talking about friendship, I was like, you know, one day you might get friends, one day you might lose your friends and stuff. And I'm sort of saying it in this way of just, you know, like you try and give general advice and pretend that you think these things are going to happen, but deep down you never do. But then it has happened for me, and it just shows that sometimes you just have to, when you least expect friends to come about, they actually do. And that it's been really, really nice to just have people that, you know, I only see them handful of times each year, really, like just at random events, but just to have those people and that you can just message them every so often and just see what they're up to, even if they're doing.
That's amazing.
It's been great. It's kind of changed my whole perspective on everything and just made me feel like part of something again, which I just haven't had.
And I think it's amazing to be so open and kind of transparent about that as well. And I think, how was that kind of initial response when you kind of spoke about it on your Instagram story?
It was, I think a lot of people were, there was two sort of forms of people. Some people were shocked and they were like, oh my God, don't be silly, you must have friends. Don't, you know, obviously everyone has friends.
I was probably part of that group. I was a bit shocked. If I was honest,
and I think, you know, I guess you see someone online and stuff and you sort of just, you make assumptions about them and you just assume that they would, and they seem quite happy and they're always smiley and everything. And you think, well, obviously they must have friends. Yeah. And then there was probably a bigger percentage of people who were like, me too. And I don't have, like, loads of people said to me like, oh my God, I thought I was the only person who doesn't have friends, and I sit on my own at home all day seeing all these other people that I know having fun, and, you know, I haven't ever done this, I've never done that. And it was really, it was kind of upsetting hearing some of these stories that people were giving to me, but equally just nice to be able to tell these people that they're not the only one, and there's lots of people just like them, like me. But also I was able to say, look, I've spoken to hundreds of people now and you're not the only person. And I just think it was a really, I didn't really know what the response would be. I don't really know why I did it, but
I was going to say that. Yeah. Was there a point where you're like, oh, like maybe I just want to get this off my chest and kind of share it?
I feel like just because I've been so open and like
the whole time.
Yeah. I just felt like
it doesn't feel like a weird thing. I imagine if you've been open from day one, why would it feel weird?
Yeah, exactly. It just came out, and it really hit a chord with a lot of people. And I'm just really happy that I did, even though it's like I was saying to you yesterday, it's probably the thing I've had the most response about ever. Like, you'd think, you know, I've been making gluten-free recipes for 10 years and stuff, and everyone knows me for that. But the thing that people really sort of get into and really message me about, even now, they'll message me knowing that I'm in a better place, but they'll tell me how they're feeling and asking for some degree of personal sort of advice and stuff. And
I find it quite tricky sometimes, because I feel with mine being food allergies.
Yeah.
If people have had a really bad experience, like they would like rant to me about it, and it'll be a lot. It'll be a massive message. It'll be huge.
Really long. Yeah.
But then it's difficult in my sense, because like, I don't know how to word this. It's like, I could be having the best day, and then someone's using me as a
It's
soundboard.
yeah.
And they don't want. Usually, they don't even want a response. It isn't like, what do you?
No, because at the end of it, sometimes people will say, I don't even know why I wrote this, but I just needed to get it off my chest.
And it's just like, and I think it's because like maybe they don't have like a friend who has an allergy, so they
Yeah.
wouldn't relate to. But then for me, I find that quite difficult.
Yeah.
It's like, because look, like I've got my own struggles as well.
Yeah, I think
can be quite
firstly,
tricky, yeah.
it's like, it's difficult because you don't really know what to say back to someone. Like, because firstly, there are certain things that you can't really say back because we're not professionals and stuff, and we've only got this.
That, yeah.
So it's like this awkward sort of balance. And then secondly, it's like when someone writes so much, it's really overwhelming. And like, I want to be able to sit and read all of these messages constantly and stuff, but there's only so many hours in a day. And if you spent like all your time, you could literally spend all your time.
Do you reply to a lot of the DMs you get? I mean,
I
imagine
I
must
reply
get so many.
I reply
but, yeah.
to I focus a lot on my Facebook group, and I've kind of said to people, if you want to get proper messages and response back, so every message I get on my Facebook group, I'll reply to every single one. Like it's completely personal, and I do that, and it takes over my day and takes over my life, and I kind of love it, but I kind of just get exhausted. I
completely get it, like why you have such a strong connection with your audience, because I think it's crazy when I go to the shows and I see the amount of people which go there just to see yourself and get a signed book. But then when I've done my research and dig deep, and I saw that you reply back to a lot of messages, it all kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
really,
I just can't. And people say to me all the time, they're like, oh, you need to get someone else to help you reply to them and stuff. But it's a really difficult thing to allow someone to have my voice, and I can't. What if they say something that isn't right? What if it just feels wrong that it's me, and I always want it to be that way. And
you are the brand.
Yeah, and I don't know how it will be going forwards, because like at some point, if things are as successful as I really wish and hope they could be, and things grow even more, then it could get to the point where it's literally impossible.
I feel like honestly, it's incredible. I feel like you've achieved so much already, obviously being like Sunday Times best-selling author 4 times.
Yeah. It's
I mean, what else is obviously next for you as well? Do you have like what is the next thing for kind of Becky Excell?
It's hard to say, because obviously I feel like the books were always like, it wasn't even a dream. I never expected I would ever be able to write a book. I thought that was just something that famous people did and stuff. Okay. And then when I got to write books, that was crazy. And now I've written a 5th book that's coming out in a few months' time, and that's going to be really exciting for that to come out. And then so I kind of feel like I've ticked books, but I'm definitely I'd love to write more books, because they just seem to be so useful for people, and that's what I really like from it.
Has it been like a blueprint for you? I think of Joe Wicks when I think of like the books and then how he's branched off. Yeah. Do you have like a bit of a blueprint of like what you're following? Well,
I think for me, so I'd really like to do more stuff in the media. So in a couple of ways, like for me, I've done 5 TV appearances now on Steph's Pat Lunch on Channel 4, doing cooking and stuff, and I've really, really enjoyed that. And so I'd love to do more stuff like that on telly. Dream would be to have my own show or something, but that's some sort of dream up here that you never know. It's probably never going to happen. And then my other thing is, a really big thing for me is, I really want to, just a bit like how Jamie Oliver has done with school dinners over the years, I speak to so many parents every single day, literally, who tell me that their daughter or son is celiac or has some, even with other allergies and intolerances and stuff as well. And they have a really bad experience at school with school dinners, with food tech classes. And I kind of want to do something that makes everything more inclusive at schools and also at hospitals. I'd like to be this sort of pioneer that goes around and does it, but it's so hard to know even where to start, because like it's almost like starting again from zero, and it's like, oh, I need to probably speak to just one hospital or one school, see how it goes, do something, and then have to take it all the way up. And that's when I've got so much else on, it's like, it's just super overwhelming. But that would be that's my main sort of
That'd be
thing.
Incredible, yeah.
Yeah, that I just love to be able to help more people. And I just can't, I never had any sort of issues with what I could and couldn't eat when I was at school. So when I hear like people say, oh, my 7-year-old boy, he can't eat with his friends at school, he's made to sit on a separate table and he has to bring packed lunch and they're all having a nice thing, or my daughter wants to do food tech at GCSE and she's not allowed because they don't allow people who are gluten-free to do it. It feels almost like discrimination to me, and I feel like in a way I don't think that should be allowed, and I think everyone should be able to do whatever they want to do, and I'd just love to be able to sort of make people realise who don't have intolerances, celiac disease, allergies or anything, that, you know, there are people who exist who are missing out on stuff and are kind of discriminated against.
I get that, yeah.
And it's just, I just want to be able to help them, you know?
Yeah. I was going to ask as well, like in terms of like being like a full-time like content creator now, what does your kind of day-to-day look like for you? Like a day in the life?
Day in the life. It's a very long day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I probably get up about 8. Want to get up at 6 or 7. My alarm snoozes for like 2 hours. I'm terrible. And I guess every day is different. So I spend a day or 2 each week seems to be in London, just going to meetings, events and stuff like that. But then on my days at home, which is every day of the week, it's not just weekdays, it's like Saturdays and Sundays as well. Yeah. I write recipes, I test recipes. I
was going to ask about recipes. Like, how did you get, because obviously, how did you get started trying to find, you mentioned, and I remember reading about you was talking about crackers and like trying to find like the right texture. Like, how do you go about making food which is really tasty but gluten-free?
It's hard, definitely hard. And it's, like I said earlier, I've started everything with my recipes out of just a place of pure frustration. Like I was just really angry that I couldn't eat stuff and I was missing out on all this stuff. And I've just gradually over time just sort of developed ways in which I know things that work and then trying to make different things. But it's definitely difficult after you've written like 5 books to come up with any more ideas. Do you know what I mean? So it's it's something that I really love doing, but it's a pain sometimes. And I feel like I have to deal with all the rubbish of, that recipe failed and it failed again and it failed again and it failed again. Just so that others
quite a few attempts to get it right.
Especially with book recipes. Like they're the ones that I'll really push and I'll make sure that they're tested in different ovens, they're tested with different appliances, they're tested with different, like if I make a recipe with like that's got flour in it, I'll use a different gluten-free flour just so that it's almost foolproof. I kind of, my aim is that if I make all the mistakes, I go through a bit of hell and some tears and stuff like that, then other people won't have to.
What is the process of the book? Does it take, how long does it take? Like the first one, how long did it take you to write that?
Crazily, I had my first 4 books. 2 of them came out in 2021. 2 of them came out in 2022, which is crazy. The amount of
Did you sign up like a 5-book deal? Like
I signed up for a 2-book and then a 3-book deal, and it's been absolutely crazy. Like the amount I've had to do, and like I think for me, I would never do that many books in that short space of time again. But the benefit for me was it was lockdown. Everything was shut. So I had so much time, which also the negative of lockdown was that I had so much food that I couldn't give to people. Like I made loads of recipes and like I just put food on like my parents' doorstep and be like, you can have this if you want. But yeah, it is a long old process of like planning, then testing and then testing again, and then testing again, writing, sending it off, like doing photo shoot and everything like that. And then my biggest hate is proofing it. I hate proofreading. Like we have like people.
Should get someone to do
we
that.
Do.
Now,
yeah. We have people who proofread it, but then they'll proofread for like spelling, punctuation, grammar and stuff. But then I'm just like, I read it back sometimes, I'm like, I've missed out a whole ingredient in this one. And you just, when you're doing, 100 recipes in a book and it's sort of, I don't know how many, like 50,000 words or something per book, you get tired and you like my boyfriend proofreads and he's much better at it than I am. I get really lazy. But you get a recipe book back and then after a few weeks someone's like, I found a mistake, and you're just like, oh no, I've tried so hard.
Too late now.
So the whole process is really long. And then all of a sudden it comes out and it's like, oh, it's out now. And then you just don't.
How was that response to the first one? Because obviously it went to like number one on Amazon. Like
the first one was mad because I think obviously there's always been gluten-free cookbooks out there, but my sort of thing was that there hasn't been any gluten-free cookbooks that were super fun. And like, I always think that food should be fun, and just because we're gluten-free doesn't mean that we want some sort of medical recipe book that's all white and sort of very like talking about all sort of hospitality and medical things. I wanted it to feel like, oh, we're gluten-free, we can have a recipe book that's just like one that Jamie Oliver would put out or Joe Wicks would put out, or just because we're just normal people. We want just a nice. So my whole thing was that I wanted it to be colourful. I want it to be fresh. There isn't a single white page in any of my books. They're all multicoloured pages and stuff. So I think there was a really good response just because it was different to what had been before, and it was all simple,
like breaking the barriers.
Yeah, and I think recipe books, so often gluten-free ones, I bought them, or my mum used to buy me some, and they were full of salads, they were full of soups, they were full of boring stuff that you didn't want to eat, or weird ingredients. Like I had a Gwyneth Paltrow one years ago, and it was full of like weird berries and stuff that at the time you could only buy if you went on Amazon and spent a fortune, or a health food shop. And it's like, I just wanted to keep it simple, and my recipes are all just super ordinary. I think of them as ordinary and boring, and I think that's what people want, because people just want what they couldn't have before. And I think
that's like the basics, isn't it? Like the pastas and like.
And equally, like people didn't. I'm not a trained cook in any way. I've just done food tech at school, and people who suddenly are told, oh, they have to go on a gluten-free diet, they didn't necessarily ever want to cook. They might not like cooking very much. They just sort of almost forced into it because there aren't the options in the supermarket. So I'm kind of making the book for people like that who don't even really like cooking, but here's some recipes that you can still have so that you can.
They're quite simple and straightforward.
Yeah. So everything's stuff you can buy in the supermarket. Everything's quick. Everything's easy. It's cheap to make. I can't be bothered with. I don't want to test recipes that are complicated
all the time. And you got a 5th book coming out.
Yeah,
Is it this year?
Yeah. So it comes out at the end of August.
What's the title for that one?
It's Gluten-Free Christmas.
Gluten-Free Christmas.
So it's ridiculous. I had to announce it in April, and then
didn't it go to like number 1 on pre-orders?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Which is mad. It got thousands of.
Does it still surprise you when it like
with that one especially? Because I was like, I'm having to announce it in April. I was really annoyed. Like I said to my publisher, like, please can we announce it later? Because who cares about Christmas just after Easter? But they were like, no, we need to do it now. So I was like, okay. So we did that. And then they were like, oh yeah, it has to come out in August. I'm like, but no one wants to talk about Christmas in August. They're like, yeah, well, it's going to have to. So it's a bit of a weird one. But hopefully it means that everyone will have their hands on it by the time December comes. And it's kind of like, all those different big occasions, like Christmas. It's the time where people who are gluten-free kind of struggle the most. You're in lots of situations around different people's houses. You've got buffets, party food. I'm sure even with like your nuts and stuff, like
you always forget.
Yeah,
like family, you always get there and there's like nuts out. My mum's like, always got a nut.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, every year, like at least one family member is gonna forget and put nuts out.
And I'm sure it's
them away, like.
And I'm sure it's the same with like even like with party food and stuff, like checking that things are not like may contain nuts and stuff. It can be really tricky. And it's like this is kind of a book that's a big guide to eating like with family and friends who are gluten, like when you're gluten free at Christmas, and then also all those different situations. So your big Christmas lunch, your party food, your like leftovers, all that stuff. It's just a nice, well, hopefully nice bunch of stuff. Amazing. So I haven't seen it yet. I think it's just almost finished. Like my first copy is coming to me very soon, so I'm very excited to see it. Yeah.
We wanted to kind of talk about the double mastectomy and how you found out, because obviously you've been very kind of open about it and kind of the whole journey. I was like watching the Instagram stories the other night. Can we talk about how you found out about that?
Yeah. So again, that's something I was super open about, and something that I really wanted to be open about, because it's something that when I first was told about like the BRCA gene, I'd never heard of it. Like literally, my mum came around one day and was like, I've got something to tell you. And I was like, what? And she was like, we think that there's something called a BRCA gene mutation.
I would have been like, what?
In the family. And I was like, oh my God. And then she sort of explained it to me. I was like, oh, whatever. Didn't think that I would probably have it. But basically at the time, my cousin, who is sort of I think she's in her 40s now, she'd had breast cancer twice when she was in her 30s. And she hadn't been tested at the time, but she probably should have. But I think my mum was pestering to get her to be tested because she read into all this stuff about BRCA, which I didn't know about. And then, so she got tested, and it translated that she had this thing called the BRCA2 gene mutation. So as a result of her having it, then it could be that her siblings or her parents or whatever, or her kids, they all have a 50% chance of having it as well. So my auntie got tested. And there was then found to have it. So then because of that, my dad got tested, he was found to have it. And because like basically with genetic testing and stuff, they don't just test anyone. You can't just go, hey, can I be genetically tested for this? There has to be a real reason.
Through your family or the family history.
And so once my dad was found to have it, then I could be put forward for it. But they do it in a really cool way. Like they make sure that you have, before you have the testing, which it's only a blood test, but they make sure you have genetic counselling. And really,
what's genetic counselling?
Yeah, I know it sounds really weird,
yeah.
But basically they just sort of explain they ask you about how you're feeling, just about about your body and stuff, but also about like the situations, like if you do find out that you have this mutation, how will you feel about that and stuff, because some people might struggle with that quite a lot, so they never actually get tested because you don't have to.
Yeah.
But I obviously, knowing people in my family had cancer before, it was really important for me to get tested. So yeah, I just had this blood test, came back that I had the BRCA2 gene mutation. Basically that side of my family, we all seem to, even though it's only supposed to be.
And if you got it, there's an 88% chance of getting breast cancer.
So basically, once you've found out that you've got it, then you have some sort of consultation with, I don't know, there's so many different people along the line that you speak to, and everyone is judged and given a percentage differently. So everyone who has the BRCA2 gene mutation, if you're a woman and if you're a man, you have increased risks of certain cancers. And so for me, it was an 88% chance that I would get breast cancer in my life. But for other people, it might be like a 60% chance. So mine was incredibly high. Mine was one of the highest that I think they'd ever seen. I don't really know why that was, but it was a load of factors. I don't know if it came from that on my other side of the family. My mum's identical twin, she's had breast cancer as well. So that's a very close link to me. So basically there's breast cancer just everywhere.
Yeah,
so
family, yeah.
I had to go through all these sort of like loads of counselling stuff and talking to different surgeons. It was very crazy because it was like I didn't really know what it all meant. And like I said, I'd never really heard of it. And then suddenly I was told that this mutation meant that I would have such a high chance of getting cancer. And they were like, well, there's two options. You can either there's three options. You can do nothing. You can have a double mastectomy, or you can just be tested every year for like the rest of your life, like just a bit more frequently and get tested from a younger age. Because I think once you get to about 40 or 50, women get tested anyway, but I would be tested earlier. But I just thought, I don't want to just be tested, because I could have
always be at the back of your mind as well, like knowing that you could have it.
And you have a test once a year, and I'm like, well, I could have the test, and then suddenly I could get cancer the next day, but I wouldn't get tested for another year again. So you never know that you might just, your test might be at just a really bad time, and then you could actually get it anyway. And anyway, like if you did get tested just all the time and get scans, it's only going to show you that you've got it and then catch it early, and you still have to go through loads of treatments. So I opted for the double mastectomy, which, it was a very overwhelming kind of thing. And you kind of think at first, I was going
to say, like, what was your kind of feelings during that moment? It must be quite scary having to go through that. You don't
believe it. You say, when they say, oh, what do you think? Do you want to have it done? I'm like, yeah, I do want it done. But then you kind of, they don't give you a date. Like it was about a year after I said I was going to have it done, I had it done. And you kind of just say, yeah, I'll have it done. But you kind of don't ever imagine.
You don't really think about it.
No, you don't imagine that you're going to be waking up from an operation and have no boobs. Like it's just something that's sort of in the back of your mind. And I kind of tried to keep it like that and keep it sort of away from my brain and not think about it too much. But I felt like it was really important to talk about it on my social media as much as I could, because like I said, I didn't know what it was.
Did you get any peace of mind from talking about it? And people maybe
I think it made me. Yeah, I think it made me feel more comfortable with having it done, because I was able to talk about it. Other people came forward to me, tons of people came forward and said that they have the gene in their family. I also got a lot of, it brought with it a lot of people being very, very open about their circumstances in terms of not being allowed to be tested, but they've got loads of cancer in their family, and giving me quite upsetting sort of things, like telling me about things that weren't really to do with me, but they just wanted to talk about cancer.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot, I had to take on quite a lot again.
Imagine, it's like scaremongers that where people share so much.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, this isn't actually going to help my headspace.
No, and that was quite hard, because I really heard some awful things that people, they don't realise that telling me about how their mum has died from brain cancer, and they're worried about this, and what about this, and what about that, all these things, it doesn't help me, and it doesn't help, well, it might help them, I guess, to get it off their chest, but it wasn't really useful. So that was quite tricky, but it just felt like the right thing to do, because it wasn't something that's openly that talked about. I know Angelina Jolie has the same gene as me. So it's always like, some people call it the Angelina Jolie gene, because like she,
famous.
So because I think she's had a double mastectomy as a result as well. So there has been a little bit of chat about it, and you can find that online, but not much, and not from just a real person. Like, obviously she's a real person, but she's super famous and you can't relate to her. So I wanted to just share my story for myself, and then for other people as well. And I found a lot of people have since, because I've done loads of videos about it on YouTube. Like when I had the double mastectomy on the day, I filmed it all. I filmed my scars. I filmed a lot of stuff, and I've had so many people message me like, I've recently had a double mastectomy, and I watched your videos back, and it really helped me to just feel, or I'm having one in 2 weeks' time, and like they're really scared about it, but your videos have made me feel a bit better. So it's been quite rewarding, I guess, to talk about it. And I feel like, if I'm going through such rubbish where now I don't have any boobs, and I've got scars for the rest of my life and all this, then I should be able to just talk about it and do whatever I want. I feel like, but equally I also just feel massively fortunate, I guess, that I actually did find out.
I was going to say, obviously you found out through, was it your dad?
Yeah. So I found out, and because of that, like, I was able to make preventative choices. And there's so many people out there who, maybe have had the gene and have died from breast cancer. How long did it take to
recover once you had the operation?
It should have been longer, but I was terrible. I was out doing cooking demos again after a month. God. Terrible. They told me I shouldn't, but I had so many, because I had my book coming out about 3 months later. I started and it was getting towards the summer. I wanted to do all the cooking, like there's food shows and stuff, and I didn't want to give up on any of them. If it was like this year, I think I've grown up a little bit now, and I realised I shouldn't probably have done that, because, when I first got out of surgery and everything, I couldn't move for weeks, and I had I've still got scars where I had drains in both my sides, where I just had to go to bed every night with these 2 bottles of blood, or I don't know what it was, Gunji stuff.
Gosh.
And you had to lie, and I couldn't lie anything but on my back for weeks. And you kind of, it was awful. I was really, really sick after the anaesthetic, because it was such a long anaesthetic. And I'm not a big person, I guess. So it was a crazy sort of recovery. And I still now, I don't have as much strength in my body. I don't exercise at all anymore after my eating disorder. I just gave up, basically. But when I'm doing stuff like lifting things and stuff, I'm like, oh my God, I feel so weak and pathetic, especially because I used to be quite strong. It's been a whole sort of crazy thing, and it's like with the whole BRCA kind of journey, it kind of goes on a little bit from here. So I've got to have other things done in the future. Because
I know you spoke about if you've got kids as well, is it from 18 on they would have to have tests?
They have to have tests at that point. So I don't think they're allowed essentially to have tests before that, because they need to make their own choice about it. So I guess with my cousin's kids and stuff, they'll at some point be able to have that decision, but they're too young at the moment. But it's just a bit of a crazy sort of thing, and I'm just grateful that I found out about it, and that I've got to make my own decision. And, you know, I've gone from having like an 88% chance, I think, to a 2% chance, because obviously they can't get rid of every single piece of tissue.
Yeah.
But like women in the UK, I think, have a 12% chance. So I'm pretty much guaranteed that I won't have it. And
That's mad, yeah. I was going to ask, I really wanted to touch upon earlier, but I didn't get a chance, like how you met your husband, Mark. Yeah, I thought I said his name wrong. I was like, sure it's definitely Mark.
No, it's because you said husband. He's not my husband.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah.
This is honestly, I think because we've been together so long, everyone thinks he's my husband.
Oh, really?
But we've been together 14 years.
Wow.
And he still hasn't asked me. So I would be happily.
This whip him in shape.
I pester quite a lot.
Yeah.
That's probably why he's just decided no. But yeah, so we met in 2009. We were just
at uni. Or?
No, so he's 3.5 years older than me. But we were just out one night. So I was still at sixth form at the time. And it was a Thursday night, which was the night that we went out in Colchester where we lived. And we just met at about 2 a.m. in a bar. The bar was called the Dirty Penguin.
The Dirty Penguin.
The Dirty Penguin. So it doesn't exist anymore. But we met. I don't remember anything. I vaguely remember sitting down. I was with my friend and he was there with his friend. And we just started talking very drunkenly. I think we got a taxi back, dropping us all off to different houses and stuff. And I said goodbye, and I don't even remember giving him my number, but then he texted me and it sort of just went from there. So it was a crazy sort of
was your friends first, or did you date straight away?
It was pretty much dating straight away. It was more like we didn't speak too much. Like he kept messaging me on and off, and I just didn't really reply. And then and then eventually we went out again. We always went out on a night out where alcohol was involved, and it was just like a lot of fun. And then randomly just before I started going to uni in Manchester, then we suddenly decided, let's make this more of a thing, which was a really stupid time to do it, because then I was moving 250 miles away. And I think that's probably one of the other reasons why uni didn't really go to plan for me, because he was coming up every so often, but there's only so many times you can go from Essex to Manchester.
Yeah, it's quite far.
So it's been
So he's been like your rock throughout this whole time.
I mean, like I said, like he's been there when I had my eating disorder. We sort of stopped seeing each other quite as much for a little bit, just because I was just a nasty person, because that's what an eating disorder does. It just makes you like crazy. But he was always still checking in on me and making sure I was okay. But yeah, it's been the whole time. What does he
think about the whole, like, how Becky Excell it's just exploded now? Like,
it's his full-time job as well. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, so he never likes to kind of admit it, but we both, he was just doing other things on the side whilst I was sort of building this up. And then over the last couple of years or so, especially since the books have come out, it's just become, it's not manageable for me on my own. Like I can't do it all. So, you know, like today I'm in London, he's probably at home doing some work and stuff. And it's like, it's not, we never really think of it like he's working for me. It's like, we're just a real team where I do all the cooking and all the social media and stuff. He like looks after the website and he's more of a tech kind of person. He's really tech savvy. So if I've got problems, he sorts them out. And so, we just both work together on it. So he thinks it's crazy because we got together and now we both work together and we make our money from just ourselves. Like there's no one else. It's really mad when you sometimes just sit back.
Does it feel mad that you're doing your passion like every day?
Kind of, yeah. It's just
do you have like your ups and downs?
It's just exhausting. So some days it's just really cool, and especially when I'm out and about and seeing other people and at events and stuff, like going to the awards this evening. That's going to be really fun.
I'm so excited. It's my first time at the Free From Food Awards.
Yeah, it's going to be so exciting, and stuff like that, and being able to do things like that has been really, really cool. And like I was at the Fortnum and Mason Awards a few weeks ago, and I got to meet like Mary Berry and Stanley Tucci and all these cool people. And it's just like,
I saw the pictures.
Yeah, it's like, is this my life? Like it feels mad, but. Yeah, it's
Doesn't Nigella talk about you? Like she promoted the book as well.
Yeah, so Nigella follows me and she's made some of my recipes, and she's always really like on Twitter. People often ask her, hey Nigella, can you make this gluten free and stuff? And she goes, oh no, I don't know how to, but Becky will. And she always tags me. I'm just like, it's surreal. So she's the one person that I haven't met yet of all those sort of famous-y chef, cook people, food personalities. And she's the one.
Have you seen the videos of Munya where he takes the piss out of Nigella?
No.
And like the voice?
Oh no, I haven't.
He's amazing. Like,
yeah, I was watching one of his videos the other day. Actually, I don't know what it was on, but he's actually hilarious.
He does Nigella videos like all the time.
I need to.
No, they're so funny. I don't know if she'd ever listen to this podcast, but
I bet she would actually find them really funny herself because she's so light-hearted and cool. So
because I think she said like Mike.
Oh, the Microwave thing.
Microwave. Yeah. And he like says that in the video, and it's funny how he kind of does her whole.
He could just do anything.
Yeah,
he's hilarious.
Anyway, honestly, it's been a pleasure having you on
great.
the podcast, Becky. I've really enjoyed it, and it's great to kind of open. I think we've opened up on so many topics today.
Well, like we were saying, like for me, yes, what we do, like with you with your allergy stuff and me with the gluten-free stuff, that's what people kind of know us for, but we are so much more than that. There's there's so much more to delve into with people, and I think it's really important, and something that I've always really wanted to do is just get it out there about me.
It's one of the main reasons I did the podcast, because like when I used to like listen to other podcasts, like I always thought it was quite medical and clinical, and I was like, I just don't resonate with that, and like I actually just want to get
just gets
to
a
know
bit
the
boring
person.
and dry after a while. And,
you want personal stories. You don't want everybody knows the story of like how you got diagnosed.
You don't need to say to me, okay, so Becky, what is gluten? What is the point of that? And someone could look in the dictionary, but knowing a bit about, I guess we as humans, we're all just nosy. Yeah. And we just want to know a little bit more about each other. And I think that's really cool. So.
That's amazing. If anyone wants to kind of follow your journey, would you like to share your kind of social handles? And
so all my social handles are just at Becky Excell. And I've got a blog called glutenfreecupoftea.co.uk. Yeah. And all my books are just on Amazon. So if you want to check them out,
Amazing. I'll make sure to link that in the description. But honestly, thank you again so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.